In our family, when a husband dies, the widow has exactly 40 days to follow him into the afterlife. They call it the Eternal Service Pact because men need servants even after death. I watched my Aunt Ling drink the ceremonial poison at Uncle's memorial while her mother-in-law held her wrist steady, making sure every drop went down. My mom counts Dad's gray hairs like she's calculating how many years she has left. When I was 15, Dad had a heart attack and survived. That's when Mom started waking me at 3 a.m. to teach me how to forge signatures and which states are easiest to disappear in. In our family, when a husband dies, the widow has exactly 40 days to follow him into the afterlife. They called it the Eternal Service Pact because apparently men needed servants even after death. I was 7 when I watched my Aunt Ling drink the ceremonial poison at Uncle Ling's 40th day memorial. Her hands shook as she raised the cup, but her mother-in-law held her wrist steady, making sure every drop went down. Aunt May was 23. She'd tried to run on day 38, made it all the way to the bus station before Uncle Ling's brothers dragged her back. I remember her begging, saying she was pregnant. They said the baby could serve Uncle Ling too. My mom would brush my hair every night and tell me how romantic it was that wives loved their husbands so much they couldn't live without them. But I saw the way her hands trembled whenever Dad got a cold. I saw her counting his gray hairs like she was calculating how many years she had left. Sometimes I'd catch her staring at the kitchen knives, not in a scary way, but like she was measuring which one would be sharpest in 20 years. The thing about this tradition was, it wasn't even that old. My great-grandfather started it after his brother's widow remarried someone younger and prettier. He said it was about loyalty, but everyone knew it was about control. Dead women can't inherit property. Dead women can't remarry. Dead women can't testify about what their husbands did to them. Dead women can't tell anyone about the bruises hidden under their funeral clothes. The ceremonies were always the same. Day 40 would arrive, and the whole family would gather. The widow would wear white, her husband's favorite dress. She'd serve tea to his relatives one last time. Then they'd bring out the cup, always porcelain, always with painted flowers. The poison smelled like almonds. They'd make her drink it in front of everyone, then lay her next to her husband's photo until she stopped breathing. Usually it took about 20 minutes. The younger kids were supposed to watch, to learn about duty. When I was 15, Dad had a heart attack that he survived, but it changed everything. Mom started acting differently. She'd wake me up at 3 a.m. for lessons. First, she taught me how to forge signatures, making me practice Dad's name until I could do it perfectly. Then came the banking stuff, how to transfer money without triggering alerts, how to hide assets in different names. She showed me websites for fake IDs, taught me which states were easiest to disappear in, made me memorize bus routes to the Mexican border. Just in case you ever need to disappear, she'd say, but we both knew who really needed to disappear. Then she showed me the videos. She'd been collecting them for years, grainy footage of widow ceremonies from old family gatherings. She had them hidden on an encrypted hard drive labeled Recipe Collection. She'd pause at certain moments. Look at Aunt Ling's cup. See how it's different from Aunt May's? She'd say. Look at Aunt Lou's funeral. Notice how the coffin is so light when they carry it. Look at how her sister keeps checking her phone during the burial. That's when I learned about the secret network. For 20 years, widows had been faking their deaths. Some used special substances that slowed their heartbeat to nothing for 48 hours. One aunt was a nurse who'd been stealing them from the hospital for years. Others had doctor friends who falsified death certificates for cash. There was a whole underground railroad of safe houses in other states where dead women started new lives. They had new names, new social security numbers, new everything. Mom taught me the code words at family gatherings. Such a peaceful passing meant the widow escaped successfully. She fought till the end meant someone was suspicious. Beautiful ceremony meant they needed help with documents. The flowers were perfect meant they needed money. She's with him now meant she didn't make it out. I started helping when I was 17, creating fake IDs in my high school's computer lab using the yearbook equipment. Mrs. Garcia thought I was just really dedicated to graphic design. I made 12 new identities that year. Each one had a full backstory, where they went to school, their first job, their favorite coffee order. I got good at aging photos, making young women look older, changing hair colors, adjusting facial features just enough. We saved cousin Linda when her husband died of liver disease. She died of grief, but actually took a bus to Portland with $50,000 in cash and a new name. We saved Uncle Tony's wife by switching her poison cup with one full of sleeping pills. She woke up in Nevada. Not everyone made it. Aunt Patricia's mother-in-law caught her packing. They made her drink 2 cups. Everything went to hell when Uncle Jimmy died. His wife Anna was only 19 and she was pregnant. Uncle Jimmy had been 67, his 4th wife. The previous 3 had all followed him into the afterlife within their 40 days. The family started the countdown immediately. They moved Anna into grandmother's house so she couldn't run. They took her phone, her cards, her shoes. But Anna was different. She didn't want to run. She wanted to fight. She showed up at our door 3 days after Uncle Jimmy's funeral, somehow having slipped past the aunts who were supposed to be watching her. Her face was swollen from crying, but her eyes burned with something I'd never seen in any of the other widows. She grabbed my mother's hands and squeezed them until her knuckles went white. Mom pulled her inside quickly, checking the street before closing the door. The living room curtains were already drawn. Anna's whole body shook as she stood in our hallway, barefoot because they'd taken her shoes to stop her from running. Her feet were bleeding from the mile-long walk across town. I brought her water while Mom checked her over. Anna had bruises on her wrists where someone had held her down. There were red marks on her throat. She kept touching her stomach, a protective gesture that made my chest tight. Mom made her sit down and started asking questions in a low, urgent voice. How many people were watching the house? Who had the keys? When did they plan to start the ceremony preparations? Anna answered everything while I bandaged her feet, wincing as I cleaned the cuts. The answers weren't good. Grandmother had assigned shifts, 2 aunts during the day, 2 uncles at night. They'd already bought the ceremonial cup, the one with blue flowers that had been used for Uncle Jimmy's first first 3 wives. Day 40 was marked on the kitchen calendar in red ink. They were making Anna help plan her own funeral, picking out white dresses and discussing flower arrangements. Mom's face went very still as she listened. She excused herself and came back with the encrypted phone we used for network business. Her fingers flew across the screen, sending coded messages. Within minutes, responses started coming in. I recognized some of the code words. Garden needs tending meant they needed a safe house. Recipe exchange tomorrow meant documents were ready. Bringing dessert meant someone would provide transportation. But then Anna said something that changed everything. She didn't want to run. She didn't want a new identity in another state. She wanted to stay and fight the tradition from the inside. She wanted to save other women after her. Mom tried to explain how dangerous that was. The network operated in shadows for a reason. Open defiance meant real death, not the fake kind we arranged. But Anna's jaw was set in a way that reminded me of Mom's expression during those 3 a.m. lessons. We spent the next 2 hours planning. Anna would go back before they noticed she was missing. She'd play along, act resigned to her fate. Meanwhile, we'd work on a different kind of escape plan. Not running, but surviving in plain sight. I gave Anna one of our burner phones, showing her how to hide it in the lining of her purse. Mom wrote down safe words and meeting signals. We'd communicate through the other widows in the family, the ones who came to comfort her but were really checking if she needed help. Anna left through the back door as the sun was setting. I watched her limp down the alley, her bandaged feet careful on the gravel. Mom was already on the phone, activating parts of the network we'd never used before. The next few days were tense. At family gatherings, we had to pretend everything was normal. I served tea to grandmother while she talked about the ceremony preparations. She seemed pleased that Anna was being so cooperative, helping choose flowers and writing letters to leave behind. What grandmother didn't know was that every night, Anna was meeting with different network members. Aunt Lou's dead sister had sent detailed instructions on which substances mimicked death most convincingly. A cousin who worked at the courthouse was preparing duplicate death certificates. Mrs. Haney from the next town over, whose husband had died 15 years ago, sent money through a complex series of transfers. I spent my evenings in the computer lab, creating not just one identity for Anna, but 3. Each had different backstories, different destinations. We were preparing for contingencies, for things going wrong. Mom made me memorize bus schedules to cities I'd never heard of. Day 15 arrived faster than expected. Anna looked thinner when I saw her at Uncle Tony's birthday dinner. The aunts kept her cup filled with tea, watching every sip. She played her part perfectly, speaking in a soft voice about joining Uncle Jimmy soon. Grandmother patted her hand approvingly. Under the table, Anna pressed a folded paper into my palm. Later in the bathroom, I read her message. They'd moved up the timeline. Someone had seen her near our house. They were suspicious. The ceremony would happen on day 35 instead of day 40. We had 20 days instead of 25. Mom's network went into overdrive. Messages flew back and forth. I'm really curious about this whole network that's been running for 20 years. How did nobody notice all these dead women were actually alive somewhere else? The mom teaching her daughter forgery at 3 a.m. seems like such a specific detail, and I wonder what made her start collecting those ceremony videos in the first place. Safe houses were prepared, documents were rushed, but we hit a problem. The substances we needed required a prescription, and our usual doctor contact had just been arrested for something unrelated. We needed a new plan. That's when Anna surprised us again. She'd been watching, learning. She knew which aunt prepared the poison, where it was kept, how it was made. She had a different idea. Instead of faking her death with substances, why not switch the poisons? Make it look like she drank the real thing when it was something harmless? It was riskier than our usual methods. It required inside help, someone who could access the poison storage. Mom was against it, but Anna had already started recruiting. She'd found an ally in an unexpected place, Uncle Jimmy's mother. The old woman was nearly 90, had outlived 4 sons, and watched 12 daughters-in-law die. Anna had been speaking with her during the long days of confinement, and something had shifted. Maybe it was Anna's pregnancy, the great-grandchild who would die with her. Maybe the old woman was simply tired of watching young women disappear. On day 20th, grandmother announced that Anna would help prepare the ceremonial poison herself to show her acceptance. It was a test. They'd watch her every move, make sure she didn't try to substitute or dilute it, but it also gave us an opportunity. The preparation ceremony took place in grandmother's kitchen on day 21. I watched from the doorway as Anna stood at the counter, her movements careful and deliberate. Grandmother supervised every step, her sharp eyes tracking each ingredient Anna measured. The other aunts formed a semicircle around them, their presence suffocating in the small space. Anna's hands remained steady as she ground the bitter almonds in the mortar. The sound filled the kitchen, rhythmic and final. She added each component exactly as instructed, following the recipe that had unalived Uncle Jimmy's previous wives. Grandmother nodded approvingly at Anna's precision. What the watching aunts didn't notice was Uncle Jimmy's mother sitting quietly in the corner, her weathered hands folded in her lap. She appeared to be dozing, but I saw her eyes tracking Anna's movements, saw the slight tension in her shoulders. She was waiting. The poison preparation took 3 hours. Anna bottled the mixture in a small glass vial, sealed it with wax, and handed it to grandmother for inspection. Grandmother held it up to the light, checking the color and consistency. She seemed satisfied. The vial went into the locked cabinet where all the ceremonial items were stored. That evening, Mom received a coded message through our network. Uncle Jimmy's mother had successfully made a duplicate key to the cabinet during her years living in the house. She would make the switch on day 34, the night before the ceremony. We had 13 days to create a harmless substitute that looked identical to the real poison. I spent the next week in my high school chemistry lab after hours. My teacher had given me a key for my advanced placement projects, never suspecting I was creating fake poison. The real mixture had a distinctive amber color and bitter almond scent. I experimented with different combinations of harmless ingredients, trying to match both appearance and smell. Mom coordinated with other network members who had chemistry knowledge. A widow in another state, now working as a lab technician under a false identity, sent detailed instructions through encrypted emails. She'd helped 3 other women fake their deaths using similar methods. On day 25, everything started falling apart. Anna sent an emergency signal during a family dinner. I was serving dessert when I noticed her tapping her water glass in the danger pattern we'd established. 3 taps, pause, 3 taps, immediate threat. After dinner, I found her message hidden in the bathroom. Someone had seen Uncle Jimmy's mother near the cabinet at night. They were suspicious. Grandmother had announced that the cabinet would now have 2 guards, and the key would stay on her person at all times. Mom called an emergency network meeting that night. We gathered in Mrs. Haney's basement, 8 women who were supposed to be dead sitting around a folding table. Each had successfully escaped the tradition, but they all remembered the terror of their own countdowns. The discussion grew heated. Some wanted to abort the plan, get Anna out immediately through our usual channels. Others argued we were too far along, that backing out now would expose the entire network. Mom kept trying to find middle ground, but I could see the strain on her face. Then Mrs. Haney spoke up. She'd been quiet until that moment, but her words changed everything. She revealed that she'd been documenting every ceremony for the past 15 years. Hidden cameras, audio recordings, detailed notes. She had evidence of over 40 forced deaths, including video of women being physically restrained while the poison was administered. The room went silent. We'd all known the truth, but seeing the evidence laid out was different. Mrs. Haney explained she'd been waiting for the right moment, the right case to expose everything. Anna's situation, with her pregnancy and Uncle Jimmy's mother as an inside ally, might be that moment. But exposure meant risk, real risk, not just for Anna, but for every woman in the network. Some had children in their new lives, careers, marriages. They'd built entire existences on the foundation of being dead. Exposure would destroy all of that. The meeting ended without consensus. Mom and I drove home in silence, both lost in our own thoughts. We had 10 days left, and our original plan was compromised. On day 28, Grandmother made another announcement. The ceremony would be public, held at the family temple instead of the house. The entire extended family would attend, over 200 people. She wanted to make an example of Anna's devotion, to inspire other young wives. This complicated everything. Our escape plans had relied on the chaos of a house ceremony, the ability to switch bodies in a crowded room. A temple ceremony would have formal procedures, assigned seating, multiple witnesses. There would be nowhere to hide. Anna's response was unexpected. She embraced the change, telling Grandmother she was honored by the public ceremony. She volunteered to help with preparations, to send invitations, to coordinate with the temple. Grandmother was pleased by her enthusiasm. What Grandmother didn't know was that Anna was building her own network within the family. She'd identified the doubters, the ones who attended ceremonies with reluctance. Uncle Jimmy's mother helped, pointing out which relatives had questioned the tradition privately over the years. I watched Anna work during family gatherings. She was subtle, planting seeds of doubt without seeming to. She'd mention her pregnancy symptoms to the younger aunts, let them feel the baby kick. She'd share memories of Uncle Jimmy with his brothers, reminding them of his cruelty. She never spoke against the tradition directly, but her words had weight. On day 30, we had a breakthrough. One of Uncle Jimmy's nephews approached Mom at the market. He'd been assigned as one of the night guards but wanted to help. His own wife was pregnant, and watching Anna's countdown had changed something in him. He offered to be on duty the night before the ceremony. Mom was suspicious at first. We'd learned to be careful about unexpected allies, but the nephew proved his sincerity by revealing that 3 other young men in the family felt the same way. They'd been talking privately, questioning why their wives should die for them someday. This changed our options. With inside help among the guards, we could attempt the poison switch after all. But we needed a new plan for the temple ceremony itself. Even with fake poison, Anna would need medical attention afterward to complete the deception. The temple was isolated, far from any hospital. I spent day 31 creating Anna's final identity documents. This time, I made her older, a widow who'd lost her husband naturally. The backstory was detailed, where she'd lived, what her husband did for work, how long they'd been married. I aged her photos, adding lines around her eyes, gray streaks in her hair. Mom coordinated with a network doctor 3 states away. She would declare Anna dead over video call, using footage we'd prepare in advance. The death certificate was already printed, waiting for the official time of death to be added. Everything was ready for Anna's new life, but Anna was still focused on something bigger. She'd been recording conversations with family members on the burner phone, gathering evidence of coercion. She wanted what Mrs. Haney had offered, exposure of the tradition. Not just escape, but justice for all the women who hadn't made it out. On day 32, Grandmother tightened security further. Anna was no longer allowed to leave her room except for meals and ceremony preparations. 2 aunts slept in her room at night. The windows were nailed shut. They even removed the bathroom door to prevent privacy. Anna adapted. She used mealtimes to continue her subtle campaign among the family. She spoke about the baby constantly, wondering aloud whether it would be a boy or girl, what Uncle Jimmy would have wanted to name it. Several aunts began crying during these conversations, though they tried to hide it. Uncle Jimmy's mother played her part perfectly. She grumbled about the public ceremony, complained about the travel to the temple, acted every bit the traditional matriarch. No one suspected she'd already made 3 copies of the cabinet key, or that she visited Anna's room each night to check on her when the guards dozed. On day 33, the family held a rehearsal at the temple. Anna walked through each step of the ceremony, practicing her final tea service, her last words to Uncle Jimmy's spirit. She was serene, almost glowing. The nephew switching sides because his wife is pregnant hits different when you realize he's basically looking at his own future grief and going, wait a minute, this math doesn't add up. Grandmother praised her composure repeatedly. I attended the rehearsal as part of the family chorus. We were supposed to chant traditional songs during the ceremony, create creating a wall of sound that would mask any final protests. But as I watched Anna practice drinking from an empty cup, I noticed something. Several of the younger relatives weren't singing. They were mouthing the words, but no sound came out. That evening, the nephew who'd offered to help confirmed what I'd suspected. The quiet rebellion was growing. At least a dozen family members were planning to refuse participation in the ceremony. They wouldn't stop it, but they wouldn't help either. It was a small crack in the tradition's foundation. Mom spent that night finalizing escape routes. The temple had 3 exits: the main entrance, a side door near the preparation room, and an old service entrance that was supposedly locked. Our network had scouted each one, timing distances to various safe houses. We had drivers positioned at strategic points, ready to move when signaled. Day 34 arrived with unusual heat. The family buzzed with ceremony preparations. Flowers arrived at the temple, white chrysanthemums for grief and red roses for love. The ceremonial cup was cleaned and polished, its blue flowers bright against the porcelain. Grandmother personally supervised every detail. Anna spent the morning writing letters. Tradition required her to leave messages for family members, final words of wisdom and love. But Anna wrote other letters too, hidden between the traditional ones. Letters to the daughters who would be born into the family, letters warning them about the tradition, telling them about the network, giving them hope. That afternoon, Uncle Jimmy's mother made her move. During the chaos of preparation, she volunteered to check the ceremonial items one final time. Grandmother, distracted by a problem with the flower arrangements, handed over the key without thinking. It was a moment 2 weeks in the making. The switch took less than 30 seconds. Uncle Jimmy's mother had practiced the movement dozens of times. Out came the real poison. In went our substitute. The vials were identical, down to the wax seal I'd carefully reproduced. She locked the cabinet and returned the key before anyone noticed her absence. But we'd underestimated grandmother's paranoia. That evening, she announced a final test. Anna would drink a small sip of the poison during the sunset prayers to prove her commitment. Not enough to unalive, just enough to show willingness. The actual ceremony would still happen tomorrow, but this would silence any doubters. The family gathered in the temple as the sun set. Anna knelt before Uncle Jimmy's portrait, the cup in her hands. I stood with the chorus, my heart hammering. We hadn't planned for this. A sip of real poison would be enough to make her violently ill, possibly enough to harm the baby. Anna raised the cup to her lips. The temple fell silent. Even the children seemed to hold their breath. But just as the liquid touched her lips, Uncle Jimmy's mother collapsed. The old woman fell hard, clutching her chest. Someone screamed. The cup slipped from Anna's hands, shattering on the stone floor. The poison spread across the tiles, a dark stain that seemed to grow in the dying light. Chaos erupted. Family members rushed to help Uncle Jimmy's mother. Someone called for a doctor. Grandmother shouted for order, but no one listened. Anna was pushed aside in the confusion, forgotten momentarily as everyone focused on the medical emergency. Mom and I exchanged glances across the room. This wasn't part of our plan. But Uncle Jimmy's mother, even as relatives fanned her face and checked her pulse, managed to catch my eye. The slightest wink told me everything. She'd created the perfect distraction. The paramedics arrived within minutes. Uncle Jimmy's mother was loaded onto a stretcher, oxygen mask over her face. She gestured weakly for Anna to come close. Everyone leaned in to hear her final words to her daughter-in-law, but the old woman was a better actor than any of us had guessed. She gripped Anna's hand and pulled her down, whispering something that made Anna's eyes go wide. Then she was wheeled away, several family members following the ambulance to the hospital. Grandmother stood among the broken porcelain and spilled poison, her face a mask of fury. The ceremony was ruined. The poison was gone. The sun had set, making it inauspicious to prepare more until morning. She ordered everyone to return home, to gather again at dawn for the delayed ceremony. As we filed out of the temple, I noticed something crucial. In the chaos, Anna had disappeared. Her assigned guards were busy cleaning up the poison, arguing about who was responsible for the disaster. No one had seen her slip out the service entrance, the one our network had quietly unlocked that morning. Mom and I drove home in tense silence, both of us checking our phones constantly. No word from Anna, no signals from the network. Uncle Jimmy's mother was reportedly stable at the hospital, her heart episode keeping half the family occupied. But where was Anna? The answer came at midnight, a coded message through 3 different network channels. Anna was safe, but she hadn't run. She was hiding in the temple itself, in a storage room behind the altar. Uncle Jimmy's mother had told her about it during their whispered exchange, a place she'd discovered decades ago. Anna's message was clear. She would not run. Tomorrow, she would appear at the ceremony as expected. She would drink from the cup in front of everyone. But this time, the entire family would know the truth about what they were witnessing. Mom tried to talk her out of it. The substitute poison would make her sick, might still harm the baby. The fake death substances were safer, tested. But Anna had made her choice. She wanted the family to see her die, and then rise again. She wanted them to know that every ceremony they'd witnessed might have been a lie. We had less than 6 hours until dawn. The network mobilized for one final push. Mrs. Haney prepared her evidence for release. The widows who'd escaped years ago made videos revealing their survival. Uncle Jimmy's mother, from her hospital bed, recorded her own testimony about the wives she'd helped unalive. I spent those hours in the computer lab, uploading everything to secure servers. We created an automated system. If Anna didn't input a code every 12 hours, all the evidence would be sent to every family member's email, phone, and social media. The tradition would be exposed whether grandmother wanted it or not. As dawn approached, I thought about all the women who hadn't made it out. Aunt Ling with her shaking hands, Aunt May who'd tried to run, Aunt Patricia who'd been caught packing. Tomorrow, Anna would drink for all of them. And one way or another, the tradition would never be the same. The sun rose on day 35, painting the sky the color of blood and gold. The family gathered once more at the temple, subdued after yesterday's chaos. Grandmother had spent the night preparing new poison, testing it herself to ensure its potency. The ceremonial cup had been replaced, this one painted with yellow lilies. Anna arrived in a white dress, her hair pinned up with jade combs that had belonged to Uncle Jimmy's first wife. She looked pale but determined, her hand resting protectively on her stomach. The guards flanked her closely, having been scolded thoroughly for losing her the night before. The ceremony began with the traditional chants. This time, even fewer voices joined in. The rebellion had grown overnight, family members disturbed by Uncle Jimmy's mother's collapse, by Anna's quiet dignity, by their own consciences finally awakening. Anna served tea to each of Uncle Jimmy's relatives, her movements graceful despite her exhaustion. Some could barely meet her eyes as they accepted the cup. Others gripped her hands, their faces twisted with an emotion they couldn't name. Grandmother watched it all with cold satisfaction. Finally, the moment arrived. Grandmother herself carried the poison cup to Anna, ensuring there would be no accidents this time. The yellow lilies seemed to glow in the morning light. The temple fell silent except for the sound of breathing and the distant call of birds. Anna took the cup with both hands. She looked around the room, meeting as many eyes as she could. Then she spoke, her voice carrying clearly through the temple. She thanked Uncle Jimmy for choosing her. She thanked the family for their support. She spoke of the honor of joining her husband in the afterlife. But then she kept talking. She mentioned Aunt Ling, how beautiful she'd looked in her final moments. She recalled Aunt May's devotion, trying to run only because she'd been confused with grief. She named every woman who had hammered from a ceremonial cup, praising their sacrifice. With each name, the family grew more uncomfortable. These women weren't supposed to be remembered individually. They were supposed to blur together into a tradition, a beautiful custom. But Anna made them real again, gave them back their faces and their stories. Grandmother cleared her throat, a warning. Anna smiled and raised the cup to her lips. The family leaned forward. Some of the aunts were crying openly now. Uncle Jimmy's nephews stood rigid, their faces pale. Anna drank deeply, emptying the cup in 3 swallows. She set it down gently and walked to the cushion placed before Uncle Jimmy's portrait. She knelt, arranged her dress around her, and closed her eyes. The chanting was supposed to resume, but only a few voices joined in. Most of the family watched in horrified silence as Anna's breathing grew labored. She swayed slightly, her hand clutching her stomach. Someone sobbed. Then Anna collapsed forward, her body convulsing. The convulsions were violent, nothing like the peaceful passing they'd been promised. She gasped and choked, her fingers clawing at her throat. Uncle Jimmy's mother really committed to that fake heart attack. Talk about method acting. The timing was perfect too. Right as Anna's lips touched the cup, like something out of a soap opera but with actual poison involved. Several family members rushed forward, but grandmother held them back. This was tradition. They must not interfere. The convulsions lasted 5 minutes that felt like hours. Finally, Anna went still. Her body lay twisted on the cushion, nothing peaceful or romantic about her position. The temple was absolutely silent. Grandmother approached slowly, checking for a pulse. She nodded once, satisfied. Anna was dead. The tradition had been upheld. She began issuing orders for the burial preparation, but something was wrong. The younger family members weren't moving. They stared at Anna's body with expressions of horror and rage. One of Uncle Jimmy's nephews stepped forward, blocking grandmother's path. He announced that he would not participate in the burial. His wife would never follow him into death. The tradition ended here, with Anna. Other voices joined his, a chorus of refusal that grew with each word. Grandmother's face went white with fury. She threatened disinheritance, exile, shame upon their names. But the rebellion had reached critical mass. Too many had watched Anna's violent death. Too many had seen the truth beneath the ceremony's beautiful lies. In the midst of the shouting, no one noticed Anna's fingers twitch. No one saw her eyelids flutter. The substitute poison was wearing off exactly as planned, her body fighting its way back to consciousness. It was a child who saw it first. A little girl, maybe 6 years old, who screamed and pointed. Anna was moving. Anna was breathing. Anna was alive. The temple erupted. Some family members fell to their knees, convinced they were witnessing a miracle. Others backed away in terror. Grandmother stood frozen, her mouth opening and closing without sound. Anna sat up slowly, her movements shaky but deliberate. She looked around the room at the shocked faces, the tears, the rage, the wonder. Then she spoke, her voice hoarse but clear. She told them about the network, about the women who'd faked their deaths, about the ones who hadn't been so lucky. She spoke of Uncle Jimmy's cruelty, his previous wives, the bruises hidden beneath white dresses. She told them everything. Some family members tried to leave, but found the temple doors locked from the outside. The network had planned for this too. They would all hear the truth, whether they wanted to or not. Uncle Jimmy's mother arrived then, wheeled in by a network member disguised as a nurse. She added her testimony, confessing to helping unalive 12 daughters-in-law over the years. She named each one, described their final moments, the way they'd begged for their lives. The evidence played on screens someone had set up during the chaos, videos of ceremonies, audio of women pleading, documents showing property transfers after each death. The tradition's true face revealed in undeniable detail. By the time the doors were unlocked, the family was in pieces. Some wept for daughters and sisters they'd helped unalive. Others raged at grandmother, at the tradition, at themselves for participating. A few still clung to the old ways, insisting Anna's resurrection was a trick, but the damage was done. Within hours, the story spread through the extended family network. Other branches faced their own reckonings as widows appeared at ceremonies, very much alive. The tradition that had unalived hundreds began to crumble from within. Anna left the temple supported by Mom and me. She was weak but triumphant, her baby still safe despite everything. We drove her to a network safe house where a doctor waited to check her over. She would rest for a few days, then disappear into her new life. But first, she had one more task. That evening, she recorded a video message for all the daughters who would be born into the family. She told them they were free. The tradition was broken. They would never have to count their husbands' gray hairs stores or stare at kitchen knives or learn bus routes to the border. The aftermath of Anna's resurrection sent shockwaves through the temple. Family members scattered in different directions, some rushing toward her, others backing away. I helped steady Anna as she struggled to stand, her legs weak from the substitute poison's effects. Mom positioned herself between Anna and grandmother, who remained frozen near the altar. Uncle Jimmy's mother directed operations from her wheelchair, pointing out which exits to use. The network members who'd locked the doors now opened specific routes, creating controlled chaos. Anna leaned heavily on my shoulder as we moved toward the side entrance, but grandmother's voice cut through the noise. She demanded everyone stop, her authority cracking but not yet broken. Several older uncles moved to block our path, torn between tradition and what they'd just witnessed. Anna straightened despite her weakness, facing them directly. She placed one hand protectively over her stomach and waited. The standoff lasted only moments. Uncle Jimmy's nephew, the one who'd offered to help, stepped between the uncles and Anna. Two more young men joined him, then their wives. A human corridor formed, family members choosing sides without words. The older uncles hesitated, outnumbered and uncertain. Mom guided us through the corridor while behind us, arguments erupted. Grandmother's shrill commands mixed with younger voices demanding answers. Someone mentioned calling the police, but Uncle Jimmy's mother shut that down quickly. This was family business, she reminded them, no outsiders. We reached the network van parked behind the temple. The driver, one of Mrs. Haney's contacts, had the engine running. As we helped Anna inside, I saw more family members streaming out of the temple. Some headed for their cars, others stood in small groups, gesturing wildly. The tradition's fracture was visible in real time. The safe house was 40 minutes away, a nondescript apartment above a flower shop. The network had used it for 3 other escapes. Anna dozed fitfully during the drive, her color slowly returning. Mom made calls, activating the next phase of our plan. At the apartment, a nurse was waiting. She checked Anna's vitals, monitored the baby's heartbeat, and started an IV for fluids. The substitute poison had done its job, creating dramatic symptoms without lasting harm. Anna would need rest, but both she and the baby were stable. While Anna recovered, the network moved into high gear. Mrs. Haney's evidence packages were being assembled, ready for distribution. The automated system I'd set up was armed and waiting. If Anna didn't enter her code by midnight, everything would be exposed. Mom's phone buzzed constantly with updates from family members. The temple gathering had dissolved into chaos. Grandmother had retreated to her house with her most loyal supporters, but cracks were showing even there. 3 aunts had refused to help with the burial preparations for a woman who wasn't dead. Uncle Jimmy's brothers were arguing about property rights, suddenly uncertain if his previous wives had really died. Anna woke in the early afternoon, immediately asking about the plan. We showed her the prepared evidence, the testimonies from escaped widows, the documentation Mrs. Haney had collected. She reviewed everything carefully, occasionally suggesting additions or corrections. The decision to release the evidence wasn't just Anna's to make. Every woman in the network had to agree, knowing it would change their lives forever. Mom coordinated a conference call with 12 escaped widows. Some had been dead for over a decade, with new families who knew nothing of their past. The debate was intense but brief. The vote was unanimous. They were tired of hiding, tired of knowing other women were still dying. The evidence would be released, but strategically, not to law enforcement or media, but to every family member under 40. Let the younger generation decide what to do with the truth. I spent the afternoon fine-tuning the distribution system. Email addresses, phone numbers, social media accounts. We had been collecting contact information for years. The packages would go out simultaneously, impossible to stop once started. Each one contained videos, documents, and a simple message. The tradition is a lie. Your aunts, sisters, and daughters may still be alive. As evening approached, Anna made a decision that surprised us all. She wanted to send one last message to grandmother before disappearing. Not a confrontation, but a simple photo of herself holding her ultrasound image, proof that both she and the baby had survived. Mom argued against it, worried about giving grandmother any clue to track Anna, but Anna insisted. She wanted grandmother to know that her control was broken, that the tradition had failed. We compromised by routing the message through multiple anonymous servers, impossible to trace back. The photo was simple but powerful. Anna, still pale but clearly alive, cradling the ultrasound showing her healthy baby. No words were needed. The image itself was a declaration of victory. At 11:47 p.m., Anna entered the code to stop the automatic release. Then, at exactly midnight, she entered a different code. The evidence packages began sending immediately. Across 3 states, phones buzzed and computers chimed as family members received the truth about their dead relatives. The network had prepared for various reactions, but the reality exceeded expectations. Within an hour, Mom's phone was flooded with calls from family members. Some were angry, accusing us of lies and trickery. Others were desperate, asking about specific relatives, hoping their loved ones might still be alive. The most surprising calls came from the middle generation, people in their 40s and 50s who'd grown up with the tradition but hadn't yet faced it personally. Many had suspected something, had noticed inconsistencies over the years. The evidence confirmed their doubts and gave them permission to act. By dawn, the family was in open revolt. Why does grandmother just stand there frozen when Anna sits up? A woman who's controlled this tradition for decades doesn't have a backup plan? The timing feels too perfect. The child screams right when Anna starts moving, the doors lock exactly when needed, and Uncle Jimmy's mother rolls in like she's been waiting backstage this whole time. Grandmother's house, once the center of power, became a site of confrontation. Daughters demanded answers about their mothers. Sons questioned their fathers' deaths and the wives who'd followed. The tradition's careful structure collapsed under the weight of revealed truths. Anna watched the updates from the safe house, her expression mixing satisfaction with sadness. Not every woman had escaped. The evidence included confirmation of real deaths, women who'd been caught trying to to run or who'd never found the network in time. For every successful escape, there were others who hadn't made it. The nurse cleared Anna to travel on day 36. Her new identity was ready, documents perfect down to the smallest detail. She would be Catherine Haney, a widow from California moving to start fresh. The backstory was solid, the paper trail complete. Even her social media history had been carefully crafted over months. Mom and I drove Anna to the bus station. She wore a wig that changed her appearance dramatically, colored contacts altering her distinctive eyes. In her purse were $3,000 cash, a prepaid phone, and the contact information for network members in her destination city. The goodbye was brief by necessity. Long farewells attracted attention. Anna hugged us both, whispering thanks that didn't begin to cover what we'd all risked. Then she boarded the bus, just another traveler heading somewhere new. I watched until the bus disappeared around a corner, carrying Anna toward her new life. Mom drove us home in silence, both of us processing the magnitude of what had happened. The tradition was broken, at least in our family branch, but the work wasn't over. The following days brought a cascade of revelations. Uncle Jimmy's mother, fully recovered from her fake heart episode, became an unexpected leader in the family reformation. She used her age and status to protect younger family members who spoke out against the tradition. When grandmother tried to reassert control, she found her influence had evaporated. Some family members clung to the old ways, insisting the evidence was fabricated. They held smaller ceremonies, trying to continue the tradition. But without unanimous family support, these attempts felt hollow. Young wives refused to participate. Husbands faced questions from their children about why mommy should have to die if daddy got sick. The network adapted to its new reality. Some women chose to reveal themselves, reuniting with children they'd left behind. Others maintained their new identities, building on the lives they'd created. The safe houses remained active, now helping women from other family branches who'd heard whispers of escape. Mrs. Haney's evidence collection became a template for documenting other harmful traditions. Women from different communities reached out, sharing their own stories of forced ceremonies and inherited oppression. The network expanded, connecting survivors across cultural lines. I returned to school, but everything felt different. My graphic design skills, honed creating fake identities, earned me recognition from teachers who had no idea how I'd really developed them. College applications asked about challenges I'd overcome, and I wrote essays that danced around the truth. Mom continued coordinating the network, but openly now. She helped reunite families, facilitated difficult conversations, and provided resources for women still trapped in dangerous situations. Our home became a way station for women in transition, a place to rest between their old lives and new ones. 3 months after Anna's escape, we received a package with no return address. Inside was a photo of a baby girl, healthy and perfect. On the back, in Anna's handwriting, "She's free." No signature was needed. We added the photo to our collection, another life saved from the tradition. The family gatherings changed dramatically. Without the specter of the widow ceremony, relationships shifted. Couples talked more openly about mortality and choice. Some marriages ended when women realized they'd stayed out of fear rather than love. Others grew stronger, built on mutual respect rather than ownership. Grandmother isolated herself, surrounded by the few relatives who still believed in the old ways. Her house, once the center of family power, became a museum to a dying tradition. Younger family members visited out of duty, but her influence was gone. The fear that had sustained her authority had evaporated with Anna's resurrection. On the first anniversary of Anna's escape, the network held a quiet celebration. 14 women who were supposed to be dead gathered in Mrs. Haney's basement. They shared stories, compared new lives, and remembered those who hadn't made it. Anna didn't attend. It was still too dangerous, but she sent a video message. In it, she thanked everyone who'd helped her escape. She showed glimpses of her new life, a small apartment, a job at a local library, her daughter taking first steps. She looked different, older, wearing glasses, her hair a different color, but her eyes held the same determination that had carried her through those 40 days. The tradition didn't die overnight. Other family branches continued the ceremonies, and women still died, but word spread through whispered conversations and careful messages. The network grew, reaching women we'd never imagined we could help. Each escape built on the last, refining methods and expanding possibilities. I graduated high school with honors, my college applications strengthened by a portfolio of design work that showcased technical skills beyond my years. Teachers wrote recommendation letters praising my dedication and creativity, never knowing they were commending abilities developed in life or death situations. The summer before college, I created my last fake identity, not for an escaping widow, but for a young woman from another family who'd heard about our network. Her husband was dying of cancer, and his family had already started discussing ceremony preparations. We gave her a new name, a new life, and a chance to grieve without dying for it. As I packed for college, I found the photo Anna had sent of her daughter. The baby's eyes were bright and curious, looking at a world where she'd never have to count anyone's gray hairs or memorize bus routes to the border. She was free from the moment of her birth, the tradition's chain broken before it could bind her. Mom drove me to campus, the car loaded with normal college supplies that felt strange after years of secret phones and forged documents. We didn't talk about the network during the drive, but I knew she'd continue the work. There were always more women who needed help, more traditions that demanded resistance. At the dormitory, surrounded by other freshmen worried about classes and roommates, I felt the weight of secrets that would never fully leave me, but also pride. We had saved lives, exposed lies, and broken a tradition that had unalived for generations. Not completely, not everywhere, but enough to matter. That night, I got a text from an unknown number. Just 2 words. Thank you. I knew it was Anna, reaching out one last time before cutting the final connection to her old life. I deleted the message immediately, protecting her safety as we'd always done. College opened new worlds, but I carried the lessons of those years with me. In sociology biology classes discussing cultural traditions, I understood the weight of inherited practices. In ethics debates about family loyalty versus individual rights, I knew the real cost of choosing sides. In women's studies courses examining systemic oppression, I recognized patterns I'd lived through. The network evolved without my daily involvement. Younger women took over the technical aspects, creating more sophisticated systems for documentation and escape. The evidence Mrs. Haney had collected became part of academic studies on harmful cultural practices. Scholars cited our work without knowing the full story of how it was gathered. 5 years later, at my college graduation, I saw a familiar face in the crowd, one of the aunts we'd helped escape, living openly now under her real name. She'd reclaimed her life after a decade of hiding, reuniting with her children and building new relationships. She smiled at me across the crowd, a silent acknowledgement of shared history. The tradition still existed in pockets, but its power was broken. Too many people knew the truth. Too many women had survived to tell their stories. What had once been a source of pride for families like ours became a mark of shame, a reminder of generations of unnecessary death. I started graduate school in social work, driven by the knowledge that there were other traditions, other families, other women who needed what our network had provided. The skills I'd learned creating fake identities translated into helping people navigate legal systems and bureaucracies. The connections I'd made became resources for those seeking escape from different kinds of oppression. Mom aged gracefully, her hands steady now when she brushed her hair. The fear that had haunted her marriage disappeared, replaced by a partnership built on equality. Dad, freed from the burden of knowing his death would mean Mom's too, became more present in their relationship. They traveled, something Mom had never dared dream of before. On quiet evenings, I sometimes thought about all the women whose names we'd changed, whose deaths we'd faked, whose lives we'd saved. Each one was living proof that traditions could be broken, that inherited cruelty wasn't inevitable. They were teachers and nurses, mothers and daughters, all existing in defiance of a practice that had tried to erase them. The network's work continued, expanding beyond our family to help women trapped in different but equally deadly traditions. We shared resources, strategies, and hope with groups fighting forced marriages, honor killings, and other practices that treated women as property rather than people. Sending a baby photo with "She's free" written on the back is peak escaped widow energy. Nothing says "I'm alive and thriving" quite like proof you made a whole new person while supposedly being dead. Each success built on the last, creating ripples of change. Anna's daughter would be 7 now, the same age I was when I watched Aunt Ling die, but she would never witness such a ceremony. For her, the tradition would be nothing more than a strange story from the past, a reminder of how things used to be before her mother's courage changed everything. The work wasn't finished. It might never be completely done, but every woman who walked free instead of drinking poison, every daughter who grew up without fearing her husband's mortality, every family that chose love over tradition was a victory. We had proven that inherited cruelty could be stopped, that networks of care could overcome systems of control. As I prepared for my first day as a licensed social worker, I kept a photo on my desk, Anna holding her ultrasound, alive and defiant. A reminder that sometimes the greatest rebellion is simply refusing to die when tradition demands it. Her survival had sparked a revolution that saved countless lives. The tradition that had defined my childhood was broken, not through grand gestures or public campaigns, but through quiet resistance and careful planning, through women helping women, through secrets shared in coded words, through the patient work of creating new possibilities. We had inherited death and chosen life instead. Well, folks, what a ride it's been. Appreciate you letting me ramble my way through all of it right alongside you. Wouldn't have it any other way. Subscribe for more content like this.